there comes a point where you have to stop helping people to stay homeless and you've got to help them get a home. That should be the goal, not keeping people on the streets, but taking people off the streets and giving them the dignity and the space that they deserve to live the lives that they deserve to live. And that takes time and it takes effort and it takes particular spaces. And it's also going to take a lot of money. So we're not a charity, absolutely not a charity, because there's enough charities out there. This is going to take a change in consciousness on a very different level. It's going to take a change in conversation. We're talking about homefulness so that we can change that conversation from maybe the depression of homelessness, how it's been talked about for so long. So now we're talking about homefulness as something that's possible for everyone. This beautiful concept of everybody being treated in a dignified way, and community and the world, people all over the world, in Ireland to start with, actually looking after each other in a way that was really connected. There's a lot happening. There's a lot going on. There's some incredible people involved. And all I can say is 2025 is going to be a massive year for the project.
Welcome to the Age of Reinvention, eco-living, free cities, and intentional communities. The podcast where we dive deep into the journeys of those extraordinary individuals who are redefining their worlds and simultaneously changing the lives of those around them. I'm the host, Emily Braun. Today, we have an inspiring figure whose life is a testament to living unrestricted by boundaries, Ciara Heneghan. Kiara is not only a mom and truth-telling change maker, but also an author and editor-in-chief of All In magazine and the chairwoman for the Homefulness Ireland Club. Born and raised in the west of Ireland, her passion for literature has propelled her on epic adventures, shaping her into a visionary who lives life fully. From helping people share their stories to advocating for personal responsibility and love, Kiara embodies the essence of living life without limits. She has a deep resonance for reflection, awareness, huge heart, and is a firm advocate for the life is for living. There is no limit, no boxes, and no problems without solution in this woman's world. One of Kiara's life mottos is, if you see it, it was meant for you to do something about. And she lives this motto powerfully. Join us as we explore the multiple dimensions of her journey, understand her mantra of life is for living, and discover how she uses her visionary mischief maker role to make a significant impact. Kiara, welcome to the show, and I'm happy to speak with you today.
My goodness, when you hear yourself back, when somebody reads about you, I don't know if anyone else feels like it, but I go, I want to meet that person.
So we have since we met each other, and you can after then review and listen and even maybe to discover about yourself something new.
100%. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate being here.
It's my pleasure, and I was looking forward to it. Kiara, you have taken on the fascinating title of Story Weaver, and I found a different description about you on some other site, specializing in truth and impact. Could you tell us what both phrases mean and how they connect to your journey of reinvention during your life?
100%. It's a bit of a story about my mother, actually. if you'll allow me to share. So I grew up in a house with a mother who used to always say, I never lie and I never break my promises. And that woman lied and broke her promises all the time, all the time. It was insane. And when you're small, when you're little, and I've done a lot of work around attachment theory and I've worked with counselors and therapists. And when somebody says something to you, you take it on as the truth. So when somebody in a position of authority and somebody that you trust says, I never lie and I never break my promises, and then they do, and they do it repeatedly, it has a huge effect. But I never realized the extent of the effect until I had my son. And when I had my son and he started to tell lies, as kids do, it's natural. There's nothing wrong with a kid tell lies, and then it's up to us to guide them in how not to do that. And I would get cross. I would get angry because he had told me a lie, because the pattern that was so deeply ingrained in me from the way my mother had been, I carried through into my relationship with my son. So I really had to dissect it in a huge way. I had to pull it all apart and recognize that truth was really important to me. Not only because of that, but because when you tell the truth, it is the truth. You can't change the truth. You can't make up the truth. You can't add things to the truth. The truth is just the truth. And I find a real liberation in that, a real freedom, a power. When I tell the truth, it's really powerful. It's out there. It doesn't matter if it's against me or for me, it's the truth. And it is what it is. And so I would have taught my son that. And when you tell the truth, that's when you make the biggest impact. I see an awful lot in society at the minute, people talking about something that's really interesting, radical truth. Like the truth needs an extra word behind it. I've got to be a radical person to tell the truth. And maybe at the minute you do, but it leaves an impact when you just say exactly what needs to be said. And you don't lie, you don't add anything to it. The impact is massive. And how all of that connects with the story weaving is when I meet people and they tell me their stories. And they start off sometimes telling me the story they think I want to hear, right? So the nice story, the pretty version, the one that there's nothing bad and nothing wrong and they're lovely. And I know that they're lovely, but I know that they didn't become the person who they are without going through things along the way. So I want to get that story. I want to pull it out. I want to poke for it. I want to know all of the little pieces so that when I help them put it together, it's a story of truth and for impact. And that's how it all comes together.
I can very resonate with you on the side that truth is very important for me, and it was important for me all my life. And I can tell you, over the last years, it was big shock and impact to me as I understood how people perceive reality. And sometimes it's not their fault because they believe to what government telling them, to what other people telling them, this host on TV is telling them. And maybe because they used to trust and believe the authorities, they accept it as a truth. Or there's notion that everyone has his own truth. I completely don't agree. Truth is the one. There are different interpretation and it's come different story, but truths are based on fact. We will not go to philosophy because it's very important. And I found that it's impacting our life. And when I say our life, like our personal life, our social life, our business, actually, we are living in a time of the big political, societal, and economical changes. And many people are confused, sincerely confused, because they don't understand what is the truth or the truth which was instilled in them now in conflict with reality.
Well, I completely agree. And I just want to say, especially on that point, when people believe exactly what they're told to believe because we've been told to believe it for so long. And then when it counteracts with your belief system, when the real truth is shown to you, it can be so scary and it can be anxiety inducing that you sit back and you say, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to think. I don't know how to feel. And sometimes it's easier to go back into your own belief and into your own truth, because that's what you know. That phrase, it's better the devil. So a lot of people stay in that space because they're too scared.
Because it's a comfort zone. People don't like to be confronted with reality, I would say you, or get out of the comfort zone. And they will push away and they will kill the messenger as sometimes just not to get from this shell that they built for many years. And especially people with, when they have life experiences, they assume, okay, they've seen, they know, and suddenly it's all appeared differently. And you need to have special courage, I would say, and power to recognize it and get out of the shell. From your early age, as far as I understood, writing poetry and short stories to becoming the author and story weaver, can you share how your love for literature has shaped your journey and influenced your path?
Another funny story, and again, it all comes back to writing. So I started writing poetry. My earliest memories when I was 9, and there was a lot of things going on in my childhood that I couldn't make sense of. They were big, they were traumatic things, but I didn't know that they were big and traumatic. They were just bad. And I needed to figure out a way to be able to articulate my feelings and make sense of the world. So I wrote poetry, and I have a gift for rhyming. So I rhyme all the time. Everything I do is always a rhyme. And I loved the sound and the look of the words when I would write them and they would rhyme at the end. It gave me such a satisfaction. It was like a piece. So I could put my emotions and my feelings on the paper and I could see the rhyming, and it was a whole sensory experience. But later on down the line, I was in my 20s and I went to Ibiza with a friend of mine. We went over to work and we had a horrific experience. It was so bad. We met a guy who was out and about in Ibiza, and he was the local. We were over there dancing because I was a dancer for years and years. And this guy was the local drug dealer. We didn't know this, right? We were 21 and 25. Okay. Green Irish girl. We got to this place and we met this guy, and he was the local drug dealer. And as it happened, he took us out one night. And I didn't drink at all while I was over there, but my friend was drinking Blue Wicket. It's like a blue drink in a bottle. It's an alcohol pop. And my dad always said to me, whenever you're out, never drink from your drink twice if you've left it down. So walk away from it and go and get a different drink, because anybody can spike your drink. So I always remembered. But my friend didn't. And every time she would leave her drink down on the table, she would come back and drink it again. And I was out dancing, so I couldn't monitor. I wasn't saying to her, don't do that, don't do that. And I couldn't find her. Anyway, long story short, her drink ended up being spiked. It was a terrible event. And the drug dealer came back to our apartment with us, forced himself into our cab and came back to our apartment with us. The following morning, he was still there at 11 o'clock, and he asked us if we would let him back in if he came back with more drugs. It was terrible. It's just terrible. We weren't doing any drugs. This guy just wanted to force as much as he could on us. Luckily, I was fine. So I was in my right mind. And I said, absolutely. If you go now and you get more drugs, we'll let you in when you come back. And he came back and we wouldn't let him in. So he sent a little small man who was very high on drugs to come back and try and break down our door. There's a reason I'm telling you this, and you'll laugh when you hear it. So I've done martial arts for a very long time, and I don't get scared of very many things. And I'm looking out the door at this, through the peephole at this small man smacking against our door, bashing our door down. And I thought, oh, I know what I'll do. I'm just going to open the door. I'm going to let him run in, and then I'm going to catch him by his neck and his trousers. And I'm going to turn him around and throw him out the door, because I thought this will be easy. That's exactly what I did. Closed the door, barricaded it up. And I had to take my friend and put her in the shower and make sure she was okay, because she was absolutely bonkers. So she's lying in bed. I have the covers over her. And I thought to myself, there's only one thing I can do to make this better, because I can't do anything now. So I wrote her a story about a pixie named Flicky. And I wrote the story and wrote the story and wrote the story. And I read her the story. And it was the thing that brought her back. She could have died right there and then in the apartment in Ibiza. But she said that as she was coming in and out of consciousness, she was listening to me read this story about this pixie called Flicky. And she felt like it kept her attached to the life that she was supposed to be living. And that's why I write. That's why I write poetry. That's why I write books. That's why I write stories. Because if I can help one person, just one person, and they read something I write and they go, oh my God, that feels amazing, then my mission is complete in this world. My mission is complete. It's so important to be able to share story. So important.
I'm absolutely with you. And my next question, actually, what books you read from your childhood and formative years that influenced you to be who you are today? I understand that you read after then many more books, but what is the books formed you, your vision?
I spent a lot of my childhood reading Enid Blyton, Mallory Towers, St. Clair's. Anything to do with kids in a boarding school was just, it gave me so much love because they would have midnight feasts and they would all come out of their bunks in their dormitories and they would meet and they would discuss mysteries. And then I read Nancy Drew, and she was a child who solved mysteries. And I read The Famous Five, and they were kids that went on adventures. And I spent so much of my life going on adventures and being part of mysteries in the real world. But it was like the real world mirrored my reading world, and it was fantastical. And I've always had a great imagination. So when I wasn't reading, which wasn't very much, I was imagining what was happening in the world and creating scenarios for myself. And then later on, I read The Lord of the Rings whole book. It was about 1,000 pages and I read it in a weekend. I just couldn't put the book down. And that was fantastical and magical. And then as an adult, two books have absolutely blown me away. And the first book was The Five Love Languages. It is, I just think it's one of the most beautiful books in the world. And I think every child of probably maybe 12 or 13 should be given it to read as like a project. And it described to them what their own love language is, how they want to be loved and how they want to love back. I think it will be so powerful. And then the second book was The Four Agreements. And I read that long after it came out. And when I read it, I thought, I've been living my life this way all along. I wondered, did I write this book? Is this book written about me? And I've spoken to some people in the personal development space who are very aware and attuned, and they have had the same feelings. They've looked at the book and gone, wow, did I write this? It's such a powerful book. Yeah, those were definitely the ones.
Actually, this last book, the only one that I read from the list of books and authors you mentioned, because I was growing up on the different literature and different cultural environment. And this book I read later in the life here, being in Canada. But I see a lot of similarities between us, even we grew up on the different books and different cultures. My next question about homefulness. And now, for our listeners and followers who would try to understand what speaking about, I need to bring some clarity. Homefulness, villages in Ireland. It's fully self-sufficient, sustaining communities designed for up to 500 residents, including individuals and families from diverse backgrounds. These villages will be the cornerstone of a new model of inclusive living, featuring modular homes and tiny homes, affordable, eco-friendly homes, all structured around the hubs of the villages, and they also based on self-sufficiency, which means solar panels, wind turbines, vegetable grow houses, and small farm animals. They will include community center and medical facility, offering Western and holistic health practices from massage therapy to naturopathy. And they will, and the business places will be part of it, which is opportunities for residents to create their own livelihood from beauty salons to law offices. Please tell us a little bit more about this project and actually how you get to this idea, because I understand that you are leading this movement.
Yeah, so it's awesome to be able to talk about it. So there's a group of us that are working on this, and it's a group of really, truly incredible people that see the vision. And it started in 2017 when I brought my son to Manchester to his first Man United game. And the excitement was incredible. And I'm in the west of Ireland, so it's a 3-hour train journey up to Dublin. And then you go from the train station to the airport bus and you get your bus to the airport. So we were walking up the Liffey, which is the river in Dublin. And my son got quieter and quieter as he saw all of the people in their tents or in their sleeping bags. And it was cold. It was November and it was very cold. And I could see his face changing. He was only 10, but he didn't want to ask me any questions. And I thought I'll leave him to it to see. He wants to process this himself. He'll ask me when he's ready. So we got on the airport bus and headed over to Manchester, had a great time and came back. And on the way back, it seemed like there was even more people on the street. We were on the far side this time, coming down O'Connell Street. And there were so many bodies, people in sleeping bags, people without sleeping bags, people in tents on the way down the main street of Dublin. And I kept thinking, how did I not know that this was as bad as it is? I'm only 3 hours away. How have I not known it is as bad as it is? Have I switched myself off so completely from something that's really bad, that's a crisis? And does everybody switch themselves off so completely? And as we got to the bottom of O'Connell Street, my son got really upset and he said, why are they not in their homes, Mummy? And I was trying to explain to him how many different things can happen for somebody to end up without a home. From not having the money to pay their mortgage, to going down a wrong path, to making bad choices, to fighting with people in their house, to not feeling like they're safe in their houses, and so many other reasons. And he saw a young couple. Now, I'd say maybe they were in their very early 20s. And he said, can I go over and talk to them? And can I give them some money? And I said, of course you can. And I felt really inadequate because there was so many on either side of the street. And I had given like whatever I could to the people on the other side on the way to Manchester. But I felt like it was unfair. How can I help all of them? I'm just giving a few bits to these few people. This isn't enough. He went over and he had a conversation. He came back and he had tears in his eyes. And he said, will somebody fix it, Mummy? And as soon as he said the sentence, what came to my mind is surely someone will do something, right? Surely somebody will fix it. And we got on the bus and we went back home, and the whole way home on the train, that's all I could think was surely somebody somewhere will fix it. Surely somebody somewhere will fix it. And then I had a light bulb moment. I'm somebody. So if I'm somebody, maybe I'm the one that's supposed to fix it, because what we see, we have the opportunity to fix. And nothing happened. I percolated on it from 2017 to 2019 because I didn't know what I needed to do. And I was meeting people and I was talking to people and I was coming up to Dublin and I was bringing clothes up to the Simon community, and whatever I could do, I would do. Tiny little things, insignificant things, but trying to get my head around what was happening. And in 2019, I had the idea, right, we're going to end homelessness in Ireland. That's it now, done. I'm going to do this. I have no idea how, but I'm going to do it. Who do I need to talk to? And I rang Lee. And I said to Lee, I've had an idea. We're going to end homelessness in Ireland. Told him what my idea was. And he said, that's brilliant. I'd love to be part of it. And I said, great, let's do this. Who else do we need? So we contacted Bill Phillips, Declan Dowling, Aaron O'Dowd, Joseph Maguire, Julie Tooley. There was a group of people, Joe Clancy, incredible people, all entrepreneurs, all visionaries, all go-getters and doers who, as soon as I said what I said, they all said yes. None of them said, no, that's been done before and it hasn't worked. Well, I don't think that's going to work. No naysayers, just people who got on board. And we met constantly every single weekend. And then 2020 happened and we couldn't meet in person. So we took it all online and we started to build a foundation. And figure out what it was that we wanted to achieve and how we wanted to achieve it. And something I've only learned or understood recently is how important it is to note that everything worth doing does actually take time. In order for a project to have a solid chance at success, it has to have a solid foundation. So over the last 5 years, we have been building the most incredible solid foundation. And we're at that stage where we're about to take it to the next level. So we went and we had a vision day with Bill Phillip. Bill is one of the most amazing people in the world. He does this thing called future basing. And he has worked with some huge organizations like the Red Cross and councils across England. And he has brought teams together, huge teams together that weren't cohesive before, and quantum leaped them from 15-year plan down to a 2-year plan where they've achieved all of the things that they want to achieve and more. He's just incredible. And he said he would do a vision day for us. So at the time, my sister had a cafe in Mullingar, which is in the Midlands of Ireland. She said she would host. We had a great group of people come, and Bill brought us through this vision, future basing, incredible day. And we had so many things come from it. And the one thing that kept popping up was, what if we could create spaces where these people and other people could come? For example, the young mother and her 2 kids who doesn't have, like, maybe she can't afford to buy a house. Then the couple who were on the street. Then the older couple who don't want to go into old folks' homes separately, because that's mostly what they do here in Ireland. They separate them. And what about the young up and coming couple who don't have enough money to buy a €400,000 house? And they also don't want to live with their parent because they want to be independent and on their own. So the communities would be for everyone rather than communities just for people who were homeless. And the more we talked about this, the more we realized that there is so much stigma around homelessness, which is unfortunate. There's so much negativity around it. And people can be very judgmental because they're scared. They don't understand. They don't know. So I'm scared of the homeless person because dot. They don't even know why they're scared. This isn't judgment. They just don't even know why they're scared. They just are. And we don't want to fight homelessness because there's been people helping with that for so long. But there comes a point where you have to stop helping people to stay homeless, and you've got to help them get a home. That should be the goal, not keeping people on the streets, but taking people off the streets and giving them the dignity and the space that they deserve to live the lives that they deserve to live. And that takes time, and it takes effort, and it takes particular spaces, and it's also going to take a lot of money. So we're not a charity, absolutely not a charity, because there's enough charities out there. This is going to take a change in consciousness on a very different level. It's going to take a change in conversation. We're talking about homefulness so that we can change that conversation from maybe the depression of homelessness, how it's been talked about for so long. So now we're talking about homefulness as something that's possible for everyone. This beautiful concept of everybody being treated in a dignified way, and community and the world, people all over the world, in Ireland to start with, actually looking after each other in a way that was really connected. There's a lot happening. There's a lot going on. There's some incredible people involved. And all I can say is 2025 is going to be a massive year for the project.
Several questions came to my mind when I'm listening to you. First of all, government and this charity or NGO organization, are they helping somehow? What is their role in this obvious situation for many people already?
Again, honesty is the best policy, and I'm never going to not be one to be honest. Most of the time, the charities are doing the job that they have to do in order to keep the job that they have. So if people weren't homeless, what would the charity do? If people weren't homeless, what would the head of the charity do?
So what they do actually, but they need to prove that they do something, that they work something, or they just bring coffee. What do you do?
They do something. They give them sleeping bags and they give them soup kitchens and they give them dinners and they sometimes provide them with tent and they talk about homelessness and they sometimes provide homeless shelters like dormitories, which are not great places to be for anybody. And anyone you speak to will tell you that. So I'm not speaking out of school. And they do a lot, in my mind, to keep the homeless because this has been going on for so many years. We're talking,
And not only in Ireland. That's why I'm asking you.
no, everywhere. Yeah.
Because I see the same in Canada. And I see how Canada, Toronto changed over the 27 years I'm living here. It's completely different country. And more young homeless people are lying, sleeping on the streets or they clean them away. I'm about the topic of homelessness in Toronto, especially because my daughter was working in shelters.
And it's not a great space. It's not healthy.
Absolutely. But more and more people joining this unfortunate club became homeless.
And there's so much going on. So the prices of everything have gone up. Houses particularly, right? Huge amounts of money on houses, huge amounts of money on rent. Airbnbs have gone sky high. So many people are now turning what could be a rental property into an Airbnb. And that means that there's less rental properties. Governments are clamping down on building. You can't get a site here locally unless you live 5 kilometers away from the site, which means you can't build a house, which means you can be waiting for ages for building or planning permission. But if you don't have any money to do that in the first place, then you're stuck in a situation. There's a lot of people who are on the poverty line who are literally one bad decision away from becoming homeless. The wages don't represent or aren't relative to the cost of living. Salary isn't relative to the cost of living. There's so much going on inside the why are more people homeless? There's something like, and the numbers are way bigger than they tell us, way bigger than they tell us. We're looking in the region of about 22 to 30,000 in Ireland, right? It's absolutely ridiculous, ridiculous. And when you think about it, and then you look around Ireland and there are so many boarded up properties. There are hotels boarded up. There are properties that have wood on the windows and wood on the doors, and there's nobody living in them, and there's nobody doing anything about it. And it's one of those things because it's easier to not do anything about it.